That will be a blooper.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, just like a Thembi. So good to have you here.
Thanks for
We
having me.
are we're really excited, and I think obviously as we discussed, in preparation for this session, I think we're going to kick off. We're very interested, in the Thembi story. Obviously we're for South Africa, we're for Africa, we're for business, we're for the youngsters actually, picking up the baton and taking things forward. And you have got a beautiful story, I think that's going to mean a lot for a lot of people. So yeah, why don't you tell us about your journey and all about Thembi and what you're busy with and where you come from, obviously.
Yeah, that is so. Oh my gosh, Stefan, you always put me on the spot.
Indeed.
That's the best way.
Right? I think Thembi's story cannot start without kind of, bringing to the forefront the many women that Thembi has become because of the village that raised her, right? I was very fortunate to grow up in an army-based family. Both my mother and my father were part of MKs, which is Mkhonto Sizwe, for the
Yes.
ANC. And because of their exposure, right, obviously to politics, the exposure to fighting for freedom, I think I grew up with a very strong sense of responsibility, right? So much so that when I was 11, my mother shipped me off to Zambia, where she was actually deployed during apartheid, right, for high school.
Sure.
Wow.
So yeah, I was in boarding school, in all girls missionary school, which was essentially my first taste of, religion, but also a bit of politics as well, because that's where I got a taste for leadership, I think, and was developed.
Yes.
So I spent grade 8 to 12 in Zambia at an all-girls school. And yeah, a lot of that experience shaped me. When we speak about business, a lot of people like to ask me, when did you get your first bank? And it was in high school.
Wow.
We had a group called Girls Against Boys.
Girls against
Oh my
boys.
goodness.
Yeah, that's actually where my activism started.
Really? Okay, well, share more.
It started with so there was a lot of us who were going through heartbreaks. There was a boys' school that was like 3.5 Ks from us. And it got to a point where we got so fed up that we formed a council, all right? And this council had a manifesto. You're laughing, but it's a serious thing. I should send you the Facebook photos.
Oh my goodness.
And this council had a manifesto that we helped put together, right? In terms of how do we get girls less distracted by these boys and more focused on just finishing school. And it started as a joke, but I truly believe that was when God, sorry, am I allowed to mention
Yeah.
spiritual stuff?
Of course.
100%.
Indeed.
Okay. I think that's when God truly planted the first seed, right? Which would later water in my life. And I was the treasurer of this group, knew nothing about finances because I was terrible spender. But for some reason, these people trusted me. And jokes aside, that was my first experience of what it looks like to pick up a cause that you truly believe in and be committed to it, no matter how ridiculous it sounds,
Yes.
right? Because I led that up until grade 12. I believed in it up until grade 12.
When did you start with it?
Grade 9.
Grade 9.
My
Yeah,
goodness, you
grade
kept that
9.
going for a good
Kept-
4 years.
But that's what happens when you have the power of belief. you know?
100%.
I was motivated by the hate of boys, but that motivation
Yeah.
kept me committed. And I think when I look, as we speak about my journey, you'll see everything starts with the belief in a cause, right? So fast forward, I'm about to matriculate and I realize I don't know what I want to do with my life, right? All I
Gotcha.
know is I don't want to be poor, because when my father passed away, we lost everything. And the second motivation in my life became money, right? How do I make the most amount of money in the shortest amount of time, right?
Got you.
Because the goal is to be a rich aunt. And everyone was saying, go into finance. Go into finance. That's where you're going to make money.
Yes.
My academics didn't correlate at the time because, my commitments were elsewhere. And now I'm sitting in grade 11, right, with no plan, but just this idea that I want to have money. So
Sure.
I had a chat with the teachers, I had a chat with friends, how do I get into finance? And, they tell you have to get an average of 65% in maths and above. Even better if you want to go to like Ivy League school.
Of course.
And that's where I channeled all my energy. And that's like my third principle in life is that it doesn't matter if you don't start out great at something. If you're disciplined and committed, you can achieve anything, right?
I agree.
So you go from being an average student to somebody that's excelling because
Yes.
you have a motivating force. And mine was money. So I fast forward, I matriculate, I come back, go to university, and I do accounting. And I hate it. I despise it, right? No offense to the CAs and the accountants out there. Stefan, I'm looking at you.
We were both thinking of him.
Exactly. Exactly. I despised it. But I stuck with it because, again, you have this end goal in mind, right? And because you've spoken to people and everybody tells you this is the road that you should follow, you stay with it. Get my undergrad in accounting, and now I do my honors, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this. I want to do banking, right? I want to be an investment banker because their lifestyle is cool. I want to do that, right? And what you should bear in mind is, even though I pushed in my matric to excel, I was still an average student when it came to the sciences and mathematics, right? And that followed me throughout university. In fact, it got even harder.
Sure.
So I was barely trudging along, and I realized, I still want to make money, so I have to make the final push. And that's where a lot of cramming and a lot of, and looking back, I realized a lot of the struggles that I faced in the finance industry was because I crammed my way through university and didn't really try to learn and understand the industry I was coming in, right? And my advice to anyone who's in university right now, who's trying to figure out what they're trying to do, is be sure, be passionate, be knowledgeable, all right?
I agree.
100%, because there's a lot of mistakes that I made, not because I wasn't smart enough, but because I didn't have these three things.
And there's a lot of preconceived ideas because this idea, and you mentioned the look and feel of the financial industry was what attracted you because of the financial decision you made.
Absolutely.
But yeah, eventually you'll carry on with your story. But that's sort of why people need to make sure. And listen, it's part of the journey.
Yeah.
I assume, or I don't know, because with me as well, I started as an athlete, ended up in business world. So that's two opposites. But I think the same drive were there. But if I may ask, that journey, where what you are, and obviously you'll get to that now, but were there some silver lining that sort of every step made like sense because of what you're doing now? Or was it like a total disconnect? Was there like a aha moment where you shifted? Because you'll get to that now, but was there like a silver lining in between?
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, the first silver lining was the money. I got that.
Yeah.
Right? The second silver lining, if I look where I am right now, is definitely an understanding that passion is great, but it's not enough, right? Especially as an entrepreneur. You have to have some form of understanding of how your business works financially. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, particularly us in the social development space, we're obsessed with the vision and carrying that fully, that we outsource the other stuff, right? So the financial understanding of the business development. Now, while that is good, it's not great if you have no oversight whatsoever, right? Because some people can take advantage of that.
Yes.
So I think my foundation in understanding finance has been very valuable in how I run my two businesses right now, because the constant driving force is looking at, do we have money? How much money do we have? What can we spend this money on? And how much more money do we need for the next couple of years, right? And those bases helped me out. But I wanted to touch on the perception thing. You're absolutely right on that. The perception of finance being the road that would take me to a better life is what drove me. And I'm sure, Stefan, your reason for going into accounting is completely different to mine, right? I don't know if you want to share a bit about that.
Well, listen, to be really honest, I actually wanted to become a medical doctor. If you wanted to know the honest,
this is news for me.
the honest
Really?
truth.
This is the first time being a part and a good mate of him for a while.
For quite some
time. This is news for me.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, really,
Could have
because
done with him as a doctor. I just want to say.
yeah, listen, I don't think I'm going to invest 10 years now into becoming a doctor. But in short, if I can, I wanted to become a medical doctor. That was actually my dream, all through high school. But I grew up in a house where business was the topic of the year every single year. And I think if you spend long enough time within a certain environment, it's that age-old saying that you become the 6 people that you spent the most time with.
Yeah.
And me and my father had multiple conversations practically every time that I saw him about business. He's a businessman. And I think ultimately it just got me to the point where I wanted to make a logical decision as to, all right, well, listen, where can I really excel? And business made sense because that was sort of my upbringing. And then becoming a CA is probably, it's one of the best routes that you can take if you want to go into business. But it was daunting,
Yeah.
not, to say the least, the entire journey.
Yeah.
And to talk to what you mentioned, because I think that's the tie in here is, you mentioned how you despised accounting.
Yeah.
And here's the thing about going to study. People often talk, or this is at least my view, people often talk about studying the right thing.
Yeah.
That has got a myriad of challenges in and of itself, because there are very few people at 18 years of age, I believe, or at least in my experience, that
Yeah.
know what it is that they need to study.
Yeah.
And then you sit with a challenge where now you start studying something, now you're halfway in, you don't really want to quit or change because then you feel like you've wasted all of this time. Here's the thing, and I think you'll attest to this because you went through that, and it is when you study something,
Yeah.
you've got two pathways. The first one is you just study for the knowledge, you pass the exam and you forget the information, right? Which is the cramming portion. You get
Yeah.
all of the info into your short-term memory.
Absolutely.
And then there's the actual route. And the actual route is you become that profession. And that's something that I learned, whilst becoming a CA is you can't become a CA if you you can't pass the board exams
Yeah.
if you don't become a CA by nature. It's like a nature change
Yeah.
that needs to take place in terms of the way that you view risk, the way that you view cash flow, the way that you view procedures, controls, legislation, all of these things. And you can learn it and forget all of it. Listen, there might be a minority that will be able to pass that.
Yeah.
But if you don't become a CA by nature, it's impossible to pass. That's the way that it has been structured, right?
Yeah.
And that's what makes a lot of people, I think, in all directions, despise the things that they're studying because it's not true to their own nature. Now you need to go through a change that isn't true to who you are as a human being, and that's very painful. But ultimately, obviously, God willing, and if you are somebody that pursues purpose, eventually the thing that is the wrong thing will lead to the right thing.
Yes.
You get what I'm saying, which I
Yeah.
think is pretty relevant to your story again, right?
Yeah. 100%.
Where did you make the decision to, obviously because you were busy, I think I interrupted you, sorry, but you were busy talking about your journey from the financial side. Where did you start becoming, obviously you were, on the, what did you start in grade 7? Or
Grade 9.
Grade 9.
Yeah.
What was the organization's name again?
Girls Against Boys.
Girls Against Boys. Yeah,
sorry.
listen.
So you started
Gab.
with the, advocating the whole boys against girls.
Just quickly, whenever you write a book, that's going to be the name, right? Girls Against Boys. It's going to sell, right? It's very topical these days.
I love it.
So,
Yeah, sorry. Girls Against Boys, how to start your activism journey.
yeah.
Agreed.
So, where did you make the tipping point from
Yeah.
finance to, this all social coding
Yeah.
and how that sort of, learner basic,
Yeah.
all that became into being?
So, and both of you will understand this. When you're working in like a high pressure environment, right, you don't have a lot of time for the social aspect of your life, particularly in the beginning. And more, I was not connecting with my family, right? I was not going to social events. I was not spending time with them.
This is now when you entered the investment banking space, right? And you're working for a global bank.
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
Right? So you're working 100 to 140 hours a week and you're focused on not slacking because it's a dog eats dog world, right? If you are not a shark, you will be taken out. Especially as a young black woman, right? There's not a lot of representation, and you want to kind of be an example that there is space for
So
us.
there's a lot of pressure as well.
100% to perform, right? There's a lot of pressure to perform, but there's also a lot of pressure to stand out. And you become consumed by that, right? My niece was turning 6 years old. And I love telling the story because it just showcases what happens when you have a cause that you believe in, right? and went to her birthday, no gift, no nothing, because I'm a rich aunt. Everything I wanted to be, I am now. So I have, I can show up with an envelope full of cash because that's what I work towards. And she says, I do not recall this, she says that previously she had told me what she wanted for her birthday. Obviously, I can't remember at all. So I'm engaging with her, and she's like, Auntie Thembi, you forgot what I wanted for my birthday. And I'm like, what did you want for your birthday? And she's like, I want to be Steve Jobs. Right?
Oh my goodness.
And I'm just like, why do you want to be an old white man?
Good question.
And she's like, no, I want to be like him. I want to be an innovator. I want to make something that people like. And to me, that was so inspirational. You're a 6-year-old who's already thinking about, creating something of value, not just for yourself
Yes.
and for society. And that was the first time where I kind of had to have a bit of introspection in terms of all the goals that I'd set, right? And if I look at them, everything was centered on self. Nothing was outside of me, right? And I remember in that moment, like a light bulb went on, that I want that for myself. I want a purpose that drives me outside of myself. And so I say to her, awesome, how do we become Steve Jobs? And she's like, oh, I don't know, you're an adult.
You're the
You
one
figure
that
it
needs to
out.
tell me how to get
Right? And at this time, coding and robotics isn't like a thing. People aren't really talking about it. So I Google, and there is what is known as drag and drop programming for beginners, right?
I guess we're talking around about 2017.
2016.
16.
2016, like, right? And so there's drag and drop programming. There's this amazing organization that has free outsourced material that you can use. And I would go to her house. I made it a point that I'd go to her house and we would do drag and drop programming, right?
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, and then one weekend I come over and there's 4 other little girls. And I was like, oh, okay. And she's like, yo, no, Auntie Thembi, that's my friends at school.
Thembi, the tutor.
How old are they?
They're 6.
6 years
They're all
old.
6 years old.
Imagine this.
Yeah, they're all 6 years old, right?
Cool.
And I love to joke that, that's how social coding started, with 5 girls and 1 laptop. Right?
Well, that's how social coding started.
That's exactly how social coding started. Yeah, so that was the moment for me. That was I think, remember I said a seed was planted when I was in grade 9. But it began watering, right, in that moment when suddenly the course shifted from self and it shifted to outside of self, to other people. Yeah.
Got you.
Yeah.
Well, this is, if I can resemble on that, I started a different business when I was in grade 9. It wasn't that great. I didn't have a boys against girls, and I'm not going to tell what I sold. But if I look back, that's exactly, it was, because I sat with a young guy actually yesterday, and everybody's seeking, for instance, that sort of inner, how can I say, natural inclination to what they need to do,
Yeah.
and where they need to get to it. But
Yeah.
I'm a strong believer, because I do believe in the principles of seeds. Because we come of seeds, I've mentioned this quite often, but there's sort of, for me, always, and that's why I asked for the silver lining, but the silver lining started in grade 9, sort of. Actually, when I think if you go dig deep when you were maybe also 6, there would have been some sort of, instances what happened which mold you to, do the things which you do. But for instance, in my life, I were good in sports, but there was always like this hidden business side within me.
Yeah.
Buying stuff, selling stuff. Funny enough, I didn't sell anything when I was in minor or in like grade 1 to grade 7. I didn't sell anything. My selling career only started when I were in grade 9.
Oh.
I started buying and selling stuff. And that never stopped. Although I went through also a similar journey I went into the medicine side, but then dropped out there and then just became part of the family business. But within the family business that were in medicine, the business side were eventually again the one that pulled me, and that's obviously where we were. So there's also from high school, sort of for me, a silver lining for my career, my passions. But this young guy asked me, listen, okay, but how do we get to, getting to that silver lining? Because he cannot put the threads. And for me, and I don't know if you can resemble maybe on this, but for me, it's a thing of, we go to the Joe Rogan shows, we go to the Jordan Peterson shows, and we go search for all of that stuff there. But what we should actually just do is dig within us.
Yeah.
Because that silver lining or that sort of niche that we need to give to the world is within us.
Yeah.
Constantly go seeking at different places and then we get disappointed.
Yeah.
But what you actually need to do is take action because that's actually within you. So for me, that's just, it's all these youngsters are seeking this. So so on the social coding side, is what sort of the main goal there?
Yeah.
Is it sort of to birth this, the 6-year-olds?
Can I just hold you on that
Yeah,
question?
yeah.
Because I think I just have a precursor to that question. It will lead into this, right? But because I think it's very relevant just in terms of when you now started social coding, right, off the back of the discussion with the 6-year-olds and actually becoming Thembi the tutor, which is a really cool.
Is that a thing?
No, but
It is now.
it is now. But it's really, listen, it's really cool. Imagine the setting. You've got an investment banker who's making some cash moolah,
Yeah.
who's now got this heart for 6-year-olds,
Yeah.
and the 6-year-old who's got a vision to become an innovator.
Yeah.
And are
Well, that's
actually
crucial for
investing into those kids. I mean, that's a big deal, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's, people should know about things like this because, we obviously are big advocates for people actually making the difference in our country. And
100%.
that's one way of making a difference. And it started small, right? And look where it's at today. So it's a beautiful thing. The point being, though, what were if you could, or if you're willing to, right, what were who and what were the influences in your life during this time up until social coding started? Because obviously, you've now very eloquently sort of summarized your journey up until social coding.
Yeah.
But I can imagine that it wasn't easy. I can imagine that there was a lot of alone time, a lot of tears, a lot of challenges. And I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's just what I would imagine because your father obviously passed away. You were in Zambia all alone in boarding school for 5 years. You've got all of this ambition, you're strong-willed, you're chasing this huge target. I mean, listen, there are people that can do things alone. I haven't met a lot of them. But I'm convinced that you had great influences, maybe good and bad. So if you could share some on that.
Absolutely. So I think God was very intentional about preparing me, right? And what he did was he prepared me in private first before he promoted me in public, right? And what that looked like was heavy isolation. Because you take someone who has no industry knowledge on what she's embarking on, right? At this point, I'm driven solely. Initially, I wasn't even driven about, providing a space for them to learn and grow. I was driven by wanting to spend time with family. That was a driving force in the beginning. And then you realize that something has taken hold of you at some point later in the journey, right? And this is basically where I'll answer your question and then lastly touch on yours. There was a pivot that happened for social coding. About 8 months in, my niece's school announced that they would be introducing coding and robotics in their schools. So private schools were the first to jump on the bandwagon, right? And essentially what we were doing became obsolete because we were just doing drag and drop programming. They had an entire curriculum set, for actual innovation. And when that happened, yes, we managed to find other ways to hang out, but there was still this, this burning thing in me that I'm not done here. I can't explain. I'm just not done with this work. And I spend a lot of time because there's no one else on the journey that I have access to, right? Because if you look at the ICT industry in general, heavily male dominated, right? And again, 2016, there aren't coding and robotics workshops outside of university, people who are studying this thing, right? So when we made the pivot, and I say we, because this is a lot, at this point, God brought my co-founder into my life, right? And she no longer is, she was actually one of only 5 AI specialists. She's a data scientist that specializes in AI at the time, right? And she just had a passion for just giving back. And I loved her commitment was driven by the fact that when she was growing up, there were no role models that looked like her. And she wanted an opportunity to become that for other young girls.
Yes.
So we had a discussion. We said, okay, we can no longer do this with, privileged private school goers. What does the rest of the country look like? Those that aren't in private school, 100%. And she's like, well, we can find out, we'll go to a school in Rustenburg and find out. So we essentially took and packaged everything we were doing, right? Because at the time it was like, cool, we can help people become the next Facebook, the next Google.
Well, you want to initiate it.
100%. And and this was my first lesson in you never meet people at a point of your want, but at a point of their need, right? Because when we went, none of the kids came to our workshops after school.
Oh, wow.
Right? And I'm the kind of person who likes to know, why have I failed? You must tell me, right? So I go to the principal and I say, bro, well, I didn't say bro, but,
But
in
what's
my
going
head,
on?
exactly, in my head, I'm thinking, we had free food,
Yeah.
free t-shirts,
What's going on here?
right? And I will never forget the look of compassion on this woman's face when she said to me, she's like, Thembi, you have to look at this from a perspective of hierarchy of needs, right? These kids aren't looking to build the next Facebook and Google, right? They want to learn how to switch a computer on.
Wow.
And that had never crossed my mind because, again, coming from a privileged perspective, you assume everybody knows how to use a
course.
computer,
So you
right?
want to jump into coding.
100%. And also, we're targeting high school kids at this point. It was no longer
Sure.
ECD level, right? So again, assumption. And I think that's why after that, God brought me into a period of isolation to truly dig deep on what's the problem I'm trying to solve. Because sometimes when we're driven by passion, we tend to just jump in, which is not a bad thing. But you also have to carve out time to truly understand, what are you trying to solve? For who? And how does your solution drive,
Yes.
right? So going back to the story, went back to the drawing board and we like, okay, we have to start at the basics. What does that look like? It looks like computer familiarization, right? And God just gave me this idea of, a keyboard. I know we don't use that nowadays, but keyboard and mouse.
Imagine.
And God said, for the first 2 weeks of your workshop at the school, you're just going to send the keyboard around the classroom and have the kids find something on the keyboard. So have them find letter K.
Okay.
Help them shift to make a command, right? Right click, left click on a mouse.
Basic stuff.
100%.
Just to get them familiarized.
And that pissed me off.
I can imagine, because I mean, you're here.
You're
and,
there,
you
now
know,
you need to go. It's
my
like
goodness.
you're telling a runner to start crawling again.
100%. Because again, I think in the beginning you get so sold in the glamour of this idea, right? Because you're going to be the person behind all these great startups. And one day, the CEOs are going to stand on the platform and say, if it wasn't for Thembi.
Now you're sending a keyboard around looking for K.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, Lord, are you serious? Because what is this? And I fought it in the beginning because there's nothing glamorous about it. There's nothing cool, right?
Yes.
And I kid you not. First day, so we had put out new posters now. It was no longer about
Same
coding
school.
and robotics. Same school.
Okay.
No longer about coding and robotics. Now it was just about computer familiarization,
Yes.
right? And the tagline was how to get comfortable around a computer.
Okay.
Class was full.
Wow.
Class was full.
That's sort of a small lecture just on marketing right
Yeah,
there,
yeah, actually.
if you will.
Right?
I've been challenged myself.
Indeed.
And so I'm about to start like head first into the computer, and then Holy Spirit's like, send that keyboard around. And we sent the keyboard around, and I tell you that 1 hour wasn't enough because the kids were struggling. They were, and that's when my heart truly broke. They didn't know. Don't even get me started when we were doing the right click, left click on the mouse. 3 weeks.
Wow.
3 weeks to do that, right? And that's when I had that moment of you never meet a community from a point of your want, especially in social development. It's for their need, all right? And now answering your question, as I was digging deep in terms of what's the problem I'm trying to solve, right? Because again, when I started the journey, it was about spending time with my niece. Then it was about creating a safe space for young Black girls to learn how to be innovators. And now it's pivoting to, I don't know what at this point. All I know is that there is a majority of young South Africans that don't know how to use a computer. I need to figure out, is this relevant? Is it important? And what am I going to do about it,
Yes.
right? And that's when I had my first, I would say, role model. So her name is African-American woman named Kimberly Bryant. She started Black Girls Code, right?
Okay.
In the States. And at this point, Black Girls Code has become a cult on its own, right? Absolutely, right? Because, and her story is similar. She started it for her daughter. right? For her daughter to have a space to learn how to code, and then her daughter's friends, and then it just flew into this massive thing where now she's million beneficiaries. So I'm now obsessed with Kimberly. And I am, every TED talk she's done, every interview, I am digging deep. And there's a danger in that because you can admire someone, but be careful not to copy them, right? Because what they're called to is different to what you're
What we
called to.
spoke about earlier. You can learn from that, but you cannot seek your purpose within that.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And the pit that I fell into was I tried to copy her strategy for our growth, right? And everything she was doing, it didn't fit the local context. So you constantly have to, and you mentioned it earlier, you have to spend time introspecting, right? And I think as young entrepreneurs in any space that you're in, that must be regular. You're spending regular time really unpacking your thought process, unpacking your commitment to something,
Habits.
and your habits, absolutely, and also your strategy, right?
Yes.
Where does this come from? Am I doing this because I'm called to do it this way, or am I doing it because that person did it and they are successful?
Indeed.
Right?
And the idea around that, go spend your, let's say, 10 hours with that person. You'll have a total different
100%.
perspective
Exactly.
of what they went through.
100%. And South Africa is not America.
Well,
We know this. South Africa is not America.
no comment.
Right. So, I don't want to get too heavy on that kind of stuff, but essentially, now we're in a transition period, right? Which comes now my second role model, my pastor, right? My pastor has a militant type of focus and dedication towards vision. And for somebody like me, who I won't call myself necessarily militant, but at the beginning of my journey, I needed structure. I didn't have it, I needed it, right? And I think Pastor Art did a fantastic job of helping shape that. Because you forget how much what you do outside of work shapes who you are inside of work, right? So now I'm called into a season of serving outside of the mission. Now I'm serving in my church, and it feels like a bit of a contradiction because, like, Lord, I need more time to work on this thing.
Yes.
Why are you putting me into stuff that's taking up my time, right? And you're familiar with the environment I was in.
Of course.
Sometimes we're working until 3 a.m. at church, or serving, not working.
Yeah,
We're serving until 3 a.m, right? And this is a Sunday or early hours into a Monday, and you still have to wake up and be this person, right? So again, common theme in life. I was pissed off a lot in the beginning, right? Because it was like, Lord,
How's this working? It doesn't add up.
you need to give me focus here. Why are you distracting me with all these other stuff? And it's only in hindsight that I saw how he shaped me in where I was serving, contributed to the decision making, right? Because there's a lot of times I'd sit in like a team meeting and they'd say something, and I go back to, oh no, but my pastor, and just revolutionize, right? So for me, what I say to a lot of young people is serve. Even as you're building a business, find a place to serve. It doesn't have to be church. It could be somebody who's in the industry that you want to be in or you're in. Find a way. How do you serve them? How do you learn? How do you build that structure?
I can just say something. The time in our business where we expanded the most is the time when I served in our church. We're in the same church, so where I served the most time spent at serving.
Yeah.
So 100% correlation there.
100%. I mean, we're all in the same church.
Yeah.
We know our pastor, and we know how there's a lot of times just him being who he was inspired a desire for excellence. I mean, very simple example. There's a certain standard that we had in the areas that we were serving, all right? Attention to detail. That what I learned there.
Well, you apply it in your
100%.
100%.
Right? Excellence from start to end, not just in the middle, right? How are we, I remember God made me think about how are we greeting the kids when they're coming into our program? And I'm just like, what does that have to know with them? And God's like, no, how are you greeting them? So we went from, the facilitator doing whatever they were doing, and then kids just walking in and sitting down, to having a facilitator at the door, high-fiving the kids as they're coming in. How are you today? Are you having a great day? Because I saw that in my church, right?
Yes.
There's people standing in the parking lot, just waving and happy, and you drove in upset because the car in front of you doesn't know how to drive, and and then you see these happy faces, and all of you're happy, right? And all of that I learned. So to cut a long story short, that's the second person that influenced me, right? And just for context, for those that might not know what social coding does, we provide free digital literacy coding and robotics training for rural communities, for the youth, right? Because we believe that every child, no matter the background they come from, has the right to be a full participant of a changing world.
100%.
Right? Yeah. So we do that in three main ways. It's through relevant digital curriculum. So we ensure every year we're looking at our curriculum. What are we teaching? Is it relevant for future workforce 5 to 10 years from now? Right?
Yeah, because that's the importance.
That's
Otherwise,
the
they fall
importance.
behind again, and there's some catch-up work to do as well.
100%. I mean, if you look at our continent in general, you have 204 million young people who are unemployed. 204 million, right? Now,
We want to take 1 million of those.
who wants to take a million? Oh, is it?
No, we want to
That's
employ
one
a
of our
million.
goals.
There we go.
Our
I
goal
love
is
it.
to
Right?
employ 1 million
I
people,
love
yeah.
it. We are the youngest continent in the world. If you look at it in relation to the future of work, workforce must come from here. Europe is old,
Listen, you're right. It's a fact.
right?
Yes.
100%. The
Stats show it.
100%. The workforce is older. So that's why you have all these tech companies shining a light on the continent, right? All of a sudden, in a span of 2 years, we've had Microsoft build up headquarters here. Amazon.
yeah.
I mean, Amazon is building their warehouse, right? They
Yes.
will take a lot of run for their money because they're beginning to see the future
Well,
of work is in
South
Africa.
Africa is the gateway for Africa.
100%.
Nobody's going to put their head offices in Nigeria or Congo. They're going to put their head offices in South
Yeah.
Africa going up to Africa.
Well,
We
and
know
it's
that's
becoming
gonna
full circle because South Africa is the gateway to Africa, but Africa is again
Yeah.
becoming the gateway to the world.
That's it.
Because what you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll leave you.
100%, right? So if you look at the work that we're trying to do, you see 60% of this workforce are currently living in what is known as rural communities, right? And the definition for us is geographically isolated through infrastructure and through territory, right? So very
Huge
poor,
challenge.
100%. So now the mandate that I believe that God has given me is, if I am aware that all the opportunity lies in the digital era, right? Look at the grace of being able to work from home because you have internet and access and knowledge, right? When COVID hit, private schools were able to pivot to online learning. There was none of that for rural schools,
Yes.
right? 60% of your youth are sitting with no access because this great disaster has come and we were unprepared. So social coding's mission is, number one, 2050, we want digital democracy for all, right? That's 22 million rural communities that we, yeah, that was my face when God told me. I was like, are you sure? Are you going to trust me with that? What do I know about 22 million people? 22 million communities, right? So we do that through three ways. So if our mission is digital democracy by 2050 for 22 million rural communities through youth empowerment. The first is through relevant digital training. The second is through infrastructure, access to infrastructure, right? Because we need internet in these communities.
100%.
And the third and the most important, and what I'm really obsessed with, is we've given them the skill, we've given them the access to infrastructure. How do we ensure that they leverage both of this for income opportunity?
Yeah, because it doesn't help if you don't help them.
Doesn't.
Well, what's the use then?
Doesn't.
You need to enable them.
100%. What's the point of you knowing how to use a computer, right, if you can't use it in some way or form to gain income? And that is our mandate. Those are our three strategic focuses whenever we launch, right? If you look at my journey, I never knew why God had to take my father. I never knew why God had to lead my path to Zambia. But last year, when we branched out, because we're Pan-African ambition, right? When we branched out, I branched out at the high school that I went to. What a full circle moment for me, right? We started social coding Zambia at the very same school that I first became an activist.
Yeah, man, that gives me like, what do you call this in English again?
Goosebumps.
Goosebumps.
Right?
Yeah, I always say
Somebody said
chicken skin.
pox the other day.
God
it's
doesn't
amazing.
waste anything. You might not understand it in the moment. And there's so many young people that are disillusioned so many young people that are going through things right now. They feel alone, they feel misunderstood, they don't understand why do they have to be rerouted in their journey, right? Because
Well, because it's not a reroute. This is the thing. It's the actual route.
It's the journey.
but you don't know that at the time,
Yes,
right?
100%. I
For
get
me,
you.
it was like I'm missing out on making friends because when I came back, all the friendships had already been established.
Yes.
Right now, you got this little Zambian girl, and for 4 years they call me the little Zambian girl, right? I'm South African, call me the little Zambian girl. But all of this, and that's why I love when the Bible says there's not a single tear that is wasted, right? Because when we launched in Zambia last year in partnership with one of South Africa's big banks, standing on the very same platform that I would see every Sunday when I was growing up, right? Trying to hide tears because I missed home and I missed my dad. Being able to stand there and look out into a crowd of young me's and being able to honestly tell them it gets better.
Yes.
Yeah, that's.
Well, I think the key there is to honestly tell them
Yeah.
it gets better.
Yeah.
Because there's so much of value in that. I mean, listen, I listened to your story, and to be honest, I obviously know, well, not obviously, I know a lot about it because we've spent quite some time. The thing for me is that so key is the willingness, even when you're not willing, to keep on keeping on.
Yeah.
Because I listened to it and I know that you're purposely keeping some stuff out of the story because it just wasn't easy, But I know for a fact there were really times where you had to find something in you to actually keep on, and get to where you are today, right? And in that entire journey, learning simple things like real discipline.
Yeah.
People talk about discipline a lot.
Yeah.
And I mean, in our
It's overstated.
experience, discipline is one of the things that lack most.
Persistent discipline.
100%,
Some people apply discipline, but not persistent.
Exactly. And then, what do you call it? Servant leadership, right? You
Yeah.
touched on that for a moment, and I think that's a word maybe for the young people, 2 words, for the younger generation to really write on their hearts because, we've learned this the hard way, right? I think all 3 of us,
Yeah.
But everybody, again, at least in our experience, I think goes through a phase in life where there's a lot of selfishness involved. And it's not necessarily negative selfishness because you're just building your life and you've got a dream and a vision and a purpose. And obviously, most people want to make a lot of money and all of those things.
Yeah.
So you don't necessarily acknowledge the fact that it's selfish, but if you really put your finger on it, there's a lot of selfishness involved in there.
Yeah.
And then you get to the place where you realize, but this isn't making me happy. And this isn't fulfilling me, and there's a lacking of purpose that I thought I was chasing the right purpose here, but there's a lacking in terms of where I'm heading, And then you start searching for truth in that. And a lot of the truth then comes, again, at least in my experience, and obviously in the 2 of you as well, where you shift from the selfishness to the giving side, the servant leadership side, where you realize, but my value is actually determined by how much I can produce, how much value I can add. And here's the thing, it's one thing to add value to a thing, i.e. building a table or building a building.
Yeah.
It's another thing to add value to a human being.
100%.
Because adding value to a human being is eternal.
Yeah.
Adding value to a thing is finite. It's a big difference. And as I listen to you, and obviously knowing a lot about your story, I start to see how that sort of ignition took place inside of you, because that becomes almost a self-fulfilling prophecy, because you start seeing how you add value into human beings. You get what I'm saying? And now you, in fueling your purpose, you start fueling other people's purpose. Obviously, the biblical aspect is even more impressive, because now you're fueling the kingdom, right? But by actually fueling the citizens of the kingdom, right?
100%.
It's a beautiful thing.
100%.
And not to cut you off, Stefan, but if your purpose is not impacting other people, it is not of God.
Wow.
So if your purpose,
You must now not go fast when you say things like that. I know you're going to go fast. You must now take your time.
Yeah, it's something Pastor Miles Monroe dropped once, and I cannot go into the Bible, the lecture he did. But
Yes, the principle.
the thing is, people, yes, you're chasing money.
Yeah.
To say chasing money in a good way,
Yeah.
but look at the outcome.
I wasn't chasing money in a good way.
Okay. But what that led to is lessons,
100%.
obviously.
Yeah.
And that's why trusting the journey is so super important.
Yes.
But there was the silver lining that no matter how you chase the money in a good or a bad way. I can tell you, I also did not chase money in a good way, and I learned expensive lessons.
Yes.
So, but the thing is, if your purpose do not help the kingdom, which is God's people,
Yeah.
it is not of God. And the thing is, that's the easiest way to measure and keep on measuring your purpose. Does money weigh more than the impact you have in, let's say, people? It doesn't need to be, listen, yours is easy to measure because you literally have a direct impact on people, taking them out of rural communities, educating them, enabling them to become a force in the world, and actually to become socialized in the world,
100%.
and not to feel left behind.
100%.
Because you literally, it's like how I see social coding is literally like I don't want to say rubber. What's it? Raki. What's a raki?
Elastic.
Elastic band.
Yeah.
And you're literally pulling them out of their
Love
communities
it.
to catch up with the world.
Love that.
But yeah, so this is just the what Stefan said triggered me regarding building the kingdom, and it's so beautiful to see the whole, let's say, social coding impacting directly, because it's easy for you to measure, because if the money part weighs more, you're on the wrong track. But God will never leave you
Yeah.
behind
Yeah.
and let you suffer
100%.
building his kingdom.
100%. And I mean, I don't want your audience to get me wrong. Money is important in what we're doing, right?
We spoke about it the last time as well. So I just want to say, you cannot do business without money.
You need money. And you cannot grow without money
Yes.
either, especially at the scale that we want to grow at, right? And there's two things I want to touch on. So allow me to be dear Makar for like 2 seconds.
Can I just pause you there?
Yes.
Sorry. Keep the two things.
So there's two things that I want to touch on, right? That you both brought up extremely valid points. Number one, we absolutely need money, right, in order to grow at the scale that we want to grow. My biggest concern is that if we have 60% of our population that is offline, right, and we are moving into a democracy that heavily relies on being online, because at some point we're going to move all of our voting online, right? That's 60% of people that don't have a voice, and won't be able to vote and put their input into how a country should be led, right? And I think the one thing about the work that we're trying to do at Social Coding is to empower people, right? Digital knowledge empowers people. The Bible says the people perished because of lack of knowledge. If you put that in the context of the work that we're doing right now, our people are perishing because there's so much out there that they have no access to. They don't know how to, create proper decisions, right? Because the information they have is limited. They don't know how to shape their thinking around what they want to pursue because the information is limited. Majority of the information is online now. They're not, right? So the work and the mandate that we're given is truly to help these communities become full participants of a changing world in every area, not only in the income area, right? But in a perspective to make better decisions about their life and their country, right? Their children, their communities, but also from a perspective of their contribution. How do we get them online so that they can share their talent with the world? We don't know how many of these kids are the next Einsteins, right?
And that's the thing what me and Stefan spoke about a lot is we've got how many 60 odd million people in our country. Surely we've got hidden talent where the masses are. I am not convinced anybody can tell me whatever they want to. We've got hidden talent, and if somebody's not going to unlock that talent, it could be dying in the communities.
100%.
Well, it's detrimental to the nation.
100%. My second point that I wanted to bring up was on something that you said, right? In terms of going back to the challenges and obstacles of my journey. I think what I love about the platform that Greater is enabling is the environment to speak freely, openly, and transparently. And I'm going to share with your audience something I've never shared, right? And that is the sexual harassment that I face in the work that I'm doing, right? You have a blow my own horn. Traditionally attractive, unmarried young woman, right? In spaces that are predominantly male. And predominantly a lot of the decision makers are males.
I can think.
right? There's been instances, and this is truly for, young women out there that are change makers and whatever they're doing. And I think a lot of them face this in silence, right? There's been so many incidents where I am told I can get this if I do this, right? And a lot of it, I think primarily because I'm unmarried, it's the thing of,
weighing the odds up.
100%.
Is this my and obviously that's where the enemy comes in.
Because sometimes, I mean, we're gonna be honest on this. We're gonna be honest on this platform, honey. Sometimes the person who's even like propositioning you might not be married himself. He might be good looking, and you're just like,
that's what I say.
And money.
right? A Porsche parked outside, and you're like, yeah. But you truly, and that it keeps going back to that, what the conversation we had earlier about that introspection that you have to have, right? Because if you allow yourself to be swayed from the vision because you don't meditate on it, I think that's we get so caught up in running the business and running the idea that we, disregard the time that we need to spend meditating on it, because that reinforces and that enables you to make better decisions, right? There's been so many times I've been tempted to take a shortcut, right? Because I forget sometimes the crystal aspects of, I have the big idea.
Life. Listen, that's life. It's not, people will crucify people for, how can I say, the thing is, it's difficult, but it's a reality. And I 100% agree with you, because if you do not reevaluate your values, our pastor always say, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for everything.
100%.
So you need to stand for something.
Yeah.
And how do you need to constantly remind you, what are that value systems? What are the no's? What are the do's?
Yes.
And that's why, spending time with God is so important.
Yes.
Because that all, and I'm a firm believer of the unction. So the thing is, because your unction will always tell you no, but then the opportunity will overshadow. But you had that 1 second where the unction warned you. And to work and listen to that, because that's eventually the compass.
100%.
But listen, just to be fair, if I can chime in there, God will put the right people next to you, because you need to deal with. I need to deal with your unction every day. So.
What 100%, 100%.
But something that I also just want to mention, you stated now about wanting to take the shortcut, and obviously actually going the longer route, or not necessarily longer, but the right route, if you want to call it that. It makes me actually think of Pastor Bill. I think it was Pastor Bill Wilson who said, whenever you have the opportunity to take the lift or the stairs, always take the stairs. And in the modern day, people actually always talk about working smarter, and faster and all of these things. And obviously that's relevant, but within the context of understanding that you need to grow as an individual as well, i.e. your entire journey. I read something in this week, and I don't want to go into all of the detail because it actually is a lot, but it's about human character, human growth, all of those types of the self-development book. And they talked about the fact that in this book, the theory that they're talking towards is the temperamental theory that Hippocrates actually wrote down. And he states in layman's terms that you've got a temperament which is God-given and driven by your genes, right? And then you've got character, which ties into your soul, right? And you obviously have the capability to decide what your behavior is going to be like. And then you've got your personality. And then he refers to your personality as either being truthful or being a facade, right? Because if you've got your temperament, which is your natural inclination, and your character, which is the one that decides what you're going to do, and then you've got your personality, which is the thing that the world sees. There's one of two options. Either your personality showcases your temperament and your character, which is aligned, or you realize that something is wrong either in your character or wrong in your temperament, and now you've got a facade as a personality showcasing that out to the world. The point being for this whole story is that going through the journey, right, taking the longer route, the right route, or the stairs, what ultimately happens is you build character, which is this part in between temperament and personality. And that aligns your personality with your character and your temperament so that you could be a truthful individual out there in the world. Because it's not always just about the end goal or the end point or you get what I'm saying. It's also about who you become as an individual, that character, and being truthful about who you are. So kudos to you for actually walking that journey, because it says a lot, and or still walking that journey, right?
Look,
I hope, yeah.
I hope I'm not making a mistake here.
look. Again, this is a greater podcast, so we're honest here. We keep it real. I've made mistakes.
Sure.
I have made mistakes, and as Dan said earlier, the mistakes we make are expensive, right? Character mistakes I haven't made, thank God, but I've made stupid mistakes, right? That if I had meditated on the vision and truly just really imprinted it on my heart, I wouldn't have made, right? And I think we need to get to a point as young leaders in particular where we make mistakes and we forgive ourselves quickly.
And rectify and go on.
100%. Because what keeps us in the dark place is the shame,
That's it.
right? I remember 3 years into my business, I made a mistake that, not yet I can share here, but the shame held me for so long, right? The shame held me for so long, and it made me unable to move. And what happens when you as a leader can't move is the business doesn't move. It doesn't matter how many great people you've employed, right? You can have a fantastic chief or whatever, but you as the visionary, certain things will not move unless you do, right? And I want to plead with the young leaders out there, we make mistakes.
100%.
But God is a good God, and He loves you. Rectify and move on as quickly as you can, right? Because there is so many things. Our pastor likes to say, there's some people waiting on the other side of your obedience.
Yes.
Right. So forgive yourself, rectify, and move on. Yeah.
No, that's it. Listen, and that's something that I think obviously shame is a super, like you said, you made that mistake yourself.
Yeah.
And it's almost like you cannot move on because that's keeping you here. And the thing is that sometimes, because obviously I also made a lot of mistakes. I've got this thing where I say I know I got things right because I made so many bloody decisions, and out of the decisions I made so many mistakes, but some of them worked. So, because I made so many
big ones
decisions, I could have. But the thing is, for me, it's something about and listen. There's also where personalities, all these things play a role, and it's complex. It's not that I'm easily to say, listen, forgive you. I'm a little bit hard sometimes on people to say, just forgive, just get over it and go on, because that's how I deal with myself. I get over stuff and I move on, because I like momentum.
Yes.
But the thing is, some cases it's emotional, it's personal, and that can affect or keep people from, because you say somebody's sitting at the other side of your obedience.
Yeah.
So no, that's definitely a word for our audience, especially because our audience are youngsters looking for their purpose. What do they need to do, especially young South Africans?
Yes.
So
I think 2 comments, but the next one I'll need to figure out or the second one I'll need to figure out as I speak. Hopefully I do it right. But the first one is just, doesn't the scripture say obedience is better than sacrifice?
100%.
And that's a big deal.
Saul's.
I think people underestimate that, right? Because being obedient is difficult. It talks to actually being willing to submit under authority, right? Yeah. And that's where servant leadership again comes in, and it's a big deal, because you normally need to be obedient on something that you don't want to be obedient to, So that's 100%. So that's relevant. But obviously you were obedient in a lot of things, and look where you are today, right? Obviously now referring to the mistakes again.
It's a muscle,
I think,
right?
Can I quickly say something?
You can, obviously.
So the moment you said it, because it's the story of King Saul. Yeah. And
which one though?
No, I'll tell you now. So it was King Saul needed to. Maybe let me explain it to you like this. So the thing with obedience is, and this is tied in. This is it's the story of King Saul that sacrificed the best rams, but God didn't tell him to do that. God told him to kill everything. Okay, but he did good.
In his mind, yeah.
In his mind. So it's like me asking you to cook us biryani.
Okay.
How I got to biryani now, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe yeah.
Is it the hair?
I
Yeah.
know it's dinner
But you go
tonight.
and you buy the best oxtail and you cook us a nice oxtail pot.
Yeah.
It's great. It's lovely. It's
Yeah.
good, but it's not what I asked.
True.
And that's the same with our purpose in life,
Yes.
with what God tells us to do. You
Yeah.
can still do good, but is it what God wants you to do? And that's the thing with obedience. Is if you're not obedient, because it comes down to that story of King Saul, that he sacrificed the best rams,
Yeah.
but God didn't ask him to sacrifice the best rams. God didn't ask him to sacrifice anything. God asked him, kill everything. You don't leave anything. So he did not listen. And that's the thing of the obedient side of it, is to, yes, I cannot over exaggerate how important it is to
be
follow
obedient.
your unction. And follow your unction.
Yeah. But also, I think young people should know it's a muscle, all right? You're not going to start out obedient because a lot of us start this journey on ego, right? And ego goes against obedience because obedience requires humility.
Yeah.
100%.
Right? It requires this thing that says, you know better than I. And therefore, even if I don't understand, I submit, right? And my journey personally, the first 3 years of my business was ego. Every decision I made came from a perspective of how does this serve me? If you look at how I started my journey in activism, right? It was centered around me. What's good for me, right? And when we talk about obedience, when you do it the first time, it doesn't feel great. In fact, you can do it 100 times and sometimes it still won't feel great. But what we should do as young people is focus less on how it makes us feel, right? And just in the moment, submitting to it. And what you realize is the more you do it, the more the unction becomes louder, right? It's like when you work out in the gym. I hate the gym. Bumped into Stefan 3 weeks ago, and he was doing all this stuff, and I'm on the treadmill, and I'm like, yes, right?
Oh my gosh.
But I realized, so I got myself a trainer, and that's another thing. Sometimes you can't make, or you can't.
Yes, you caught me off.
No, I'm
But
being
it's
honest.
okay.
Yeah.
No.
Just I'm looking. He actually pissed me off because now he is working out closer to the treadmill I am, and I'm just like, of all the equipments, did you really have to be in my face? Right? So I had to get myself a trainer, whatever, because again, I want to be stronger. I don't like the schedule my trainer puts me on. It's like what you're saying. He can tell me to do 10 lunges. I prefer doing 10 squats, right? Doing squats is good, but it's not the instruction of doing 10 lunges, right? First time I do it, I feel stupid. I feel stupid doing a lunge, right? And I feel like, you know, when you turn 30, your knees, everything just starts falling apart after you're 30. But I realized something last week and I went. I could do 10 lunges, right, without wanting to pass away now, right? Whereas previously, doing one was uncomfortable as hell. I didn't want to do it. I wanted to do squats instead, and I would try to reason my way out of. And we try to reason our way out of obedience, right? So to your point, Stefan, I think my advice to your audience, your amazing audience, is twofold. Number one, you're going to make mistakes, right? Like we said, forgive yourself, rectify, and then move on. Number two, you are going to be uncomfortable being obedient. Please do not listen to us and think it's an easy thing to be obedient, right? Sometimes you don't even know that you have to be obedient in a certain situation, right? So you have to have that unction. But exercise it like a muscle. Do it once and then do it again and speak to God about how uncomfortable it is, right? Tell him that, you know what, I'm doing this, but I'm not happy. I hope you know that.
Yes.
Right? But exercise it continuously. Die to self. Because your ego will always be the enemy of obedience.
And what's interesting about that is that that's a beautiful way of building trust. Because now you actually, after you've been obedient and you start seeing the fruit in you actually being obedient, you start realizing, but I can trust this unction. I can trust this voice. And that in another time it
becomes stronger because you know
exactly.
it's like again, our pastor said there's something dangerous about a man and woman that knows God is with them.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yep.
By doing that constantly, you know God is. So you almost become arrogant. Not arrogant in a bad way, but the thing is, you know God is backing. So I'm
100%.
going here because I know God's voice.
God
this
is
is
with
where I'm
you.
going.
God is with you.
Just one thing, when we started expanding rapidly, my father one day, yes, we were under the pump, and we were literally, I was young in a senior position, so I was taking a lot of hammering, and obviously he's like grooming me a bit, so he gives me more responsibility. He looked at me like this. He just said to me, "Listen, get comfortable in the uncomfortability.
Yes.
Quickly, otherwise you're gonna fail." And that's something that you need to become comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yes.
If you wanna build a huge business career, that's like a reality more than anything else.
I want to just circle back on that into something that Thembi said, right? Because I've been thinking the whole time about, a lot of these principles that we mentioned speak about, people are aware of some of them, maybe not all of them, right? But the word that you mentioned is, meditating on these things. And I think that's where a lot of people fall short, because I think there's a lot of people that have often heard become comfortable being uncomfortable, right? In a sentence,
never
in your
dealt with
passing,
it.
but they never dealt with it, right? Or they never really made it part of their way of life, right? So the point being that, well, actually, the question being to you, when you meditate on things, how much do you spend a lot of time meditating on all of these principles so that they actually remain sort of ingrained in who you are as an individual? Because I think that's where people struggle. They hear something once or twice, maybe even 5 times, but they so struggle to actually implement it in their daily lives.
I love that question because it brings to the forefront what I think every young leader should have, and that's practices, right? You should have your own personal practices that serve as reminders to what you're working towards, right? I'm the kind of person who needs an action plan because I'm such an unstructured person, right? I love going with the flow. It's my favorite thing to do. But God has put me in a position where that doesn't work here, my honey. You have to have focus. So he has enabled and given me ideas that are practical that reinforce, right? So I can't sit like Jay Shetty, cross-legged like a Buddhist, right? And my vision is 22 million rural communities. I can't do that, right?
Not happening for you.
No. What does work for me is I have what is I call my Jericho box, right? One of my favorite stories in the Bible is the story of the walls of Jericho and how they fell, right? I love it because it's ridiculous. Just the solution that God gives, just ridiculous. I love it. Right?
And required a lot of obedience.
100.
7 times around the city.
Sometimes I love to sit and just like have a movie in my head and just imagine like people's facial expressions when God gives them an instruction. I promise you, 100%. I promise you, like how many WTF facial expressions did these people have whenever God said do something? Because almost always it was just a ridiculous thing, right? But anyway, going back to it. So I love this story, ridiculousness aside, because there was a practical element to it, right? And I think it's also a meditative thing because it's repetitive, right? There is repetition in meditation. So I have this gorgeous velvet box. It's falling apart now. But in it, I have put everything that I'm working towards when it comes to the vision, right? So I wrote the vision exactly on a one pager, folded it up, and I put it there. I've got a cutout of, I'm going to tell you everything I have in there, but I have a cutout of the continent. Absolutely. 155%. I even have a picture of the kind of man I want. Okay.
That's how it should be. So that was just like I lured you towards there. So if there weren't a ring, you're gonna put a ring in.
You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? I have a cutout of the continent of Africa, and so I have things that symbolize what the vision is and how it's given to me. And every time, because sometimes the vision won't change, but something might be added to it or subtracted, right? So I'm consciously aware, 100%. So different things will come in and sometimes different things will come out, right? Before I said, I had put in there, my man has to be 6'5", right? And then I had to take that out because I'm just like, oh, what if he's 6'1"? But anyway, so when it comes to the practice of that introspection and meditation, I've made it practical, right? So once a week, I take out my Jericho box and I circle it several times.
Oh, wow.
7 times I circle that box. 7 times I circle that box, and I'm intentionally thinking and praying about everything that's in there, right? Because I've realized that the hum does not work for me, right? But what does? And that's the thing about our God. Our God is so good that He doesn't treat us like a one size fits all. What works for you won't work for me. That pull-up nonsense you do at the gym, you're never going to see me do that, right? But will I eventually reach my goals? I will, because I'm taking a certain journey, right?
Yes.
So practices for me is, circling. There's this amazing book. It's called The Circle Maker, right, by Pastor Mark Batterson. I encourage every young person to read that book, because it starts out with the story of this prophet, right, who was sitting on the outside gates of of Jericho. It hadn't rained for decades. And eventually the people come out and they go to him and they say, please, we know that the Lord listens to you. Pray for rain for us. All right. So he comes out of his tent, living very modestly, comes out of his tent, and he draws a circle in the sand and he stands in it. Right. And he says, Lord, I will not move from this thing until you send rain. Right. And then it starts to pour, flooding hectically, like the people are scared and they're screaming, no, that's not the kind of rain we want, right? So again, he's standing in that circle and he says, Lord, this is not the kind of rain I'm praying for. I am praying for rain that shows your blessing, your abundance, your goodness. And now it starts to rain good, pure, amazingly, right? And that for me is my meditation, circling my Jericho box and reaffirming that I will not move from this from the space of meditation. I will not move from the space of prayer until God does what's in that box. So I think young people should find what works for them when it comes to kind of meditating on the purpose that God has given them, meditating on the journey and the strategy. Find what works for you. If you are a Buddhist or a monk and the hums work for you, do that. Carve out time. Put it in your calendar. Carve out time to say, from this time to this time, I'm doing this because it works for me, right? If you are like me and you like a practical application, do that. If you are a journaler, do that.
Yes.
The only principles that work across the board is intentionally setting aside time, intentionally turning off all distractions, right? Even if it's 5 minutes a week. And thirdly, afterwards, saying and writing down everything that's come to you. I think across the board, whatever you decide to do, those 3 things will work for you when it comes to that meditation.
I agree. And I think ultimately, in whichever form or format you do it, what that does is it literally forces you to build in habit. And if something like this doesn't become habit in your life, there's no way you're going to carry on a practice that is so valuable for 20, 30, 40 years, right?
No.
So listen, but cool story walking around your Jericho box.
I do that.
I have to admit, I didn't see that coming. I think maybe let's spend a moment, let's shift the conversation a bit towards, let me ask the question in 3 facets, and you can build it up in whichever form you'd like. So let's quickly talk vision/goal for yourself. You can do medium term, long term as you like. Then split it maybe out vision/view over Africa. And then, we can talk South Africa specific at the end, especially concerning untapped potential in South Africa, right?
100%. I think, if I look at the vision I have for myself, I definitely want to influence policy, right? I think there is a lot of room for Christians that are of sound mind, right, to contribute to the national agenda of our country, right? And a lot of that is stemmed in policy. So short-term view is short-term goal is familiarizing myself with the National Development Plan, right? And the policies attached to that. Specifically, obviously, because I have a focused approach in the field that I'm in. So that's rural development, that's youth empowerment, and that's skills development, right? Obviously, as well as the internet access, the policies that go around there. So I definitely in the short term want to spend some time digging deep there because when I eventually bring my voice to contribute, it needs to come from a space that is knowledgeable, right? Not just my idea of what I think is happening, right, at policy level. From a medium term perspective, I really want to use social coding platform and my second company, Avery's platform, as a space where young people become aware of what's happening in their country and on the continent, and know the access available to them. We're speaking about obedience, right? So I have been pushing in my leadership teams, I've been pushing the voters registration link, right?
Okay, that's cool.
Right, just like pushing it. And, one of my senior management sends me a text on the side and he's like, oh, this is getting a little political. Like, this is not what we do. This is not our space. And I said, it's absolutely what we do.
Yeah.
100%.
Absolutely what we do. What we do is youth empowerment, right? How much more empowered can you be if you have a voice in where this country is going?
Exactly.
Like, shut them up, which is good, right? And I had a young person come to me and say, Sis Thembi, I don't want to vote, right? Not that I cannot vote. I don't want to vote because I don't know which party I would vote for, right? But I feel like I should register to vote, but I don't want to. And I said, that voice is telling me to be obedient, right? The first step was just registering. Between now and the election day, you have
you can
time.
figure that out.
100%.
But register.
But also, we need to teach young people how to be responsible citizens, right? Responsible citizenship starts with disregarding the attitude of I don't know, especially when there's so much information available to you. That's no longer an excuse, right? And I think young people need to see other young people be vocal about it, talk about it, and have the action about it, right? So I am going to make sure that I set up little, after braai whatevers, right, for my people, that everybody, if you don't have that little sticky thingy, you're not coming. But yeah, I'm going on a tangent here. So my midterm goal here is truly to use my business platforms as a means to truly empower youth from a decision-making perspective, right? How that looks like, I don't know for now, but what it does look like in what I've been doing is just pushing up the voter registration links, right? And being available to questions. How do I do this? How do I do that? Long term, I truly believe that Africa as a continent is not isolated, right? And we tend to work in isolation. So South Africa here, Nigeria there, we've got this sibling rivalry with all these West African countries and all the like. But the reality is we face all the same problems, right?
Yes.
We have democracy issues,
Yes.
right? We have skills development issues. We have a youth unemployment issue across the board.
Yes.
We have there's so many things that we have in common that we need to bring all these voices together, right, to solve. And my long-term goal is holding an office that provides that, right? Holding an office that provides inter-dialogue between the countries of the continent, right? But also gives us a voice on a global stage, right? I think Africans should be the ones that are bringing forth an agenda at UN level, right?
I agree.
And
And not a
African
charity.
voice.
I agree.
100%. So those are my goals from like a short to long-term perspective, personally for me. And you'll see a lot of it right now is tied to first being knowledgeable in the subject matter, right? If you look at the business of social coding, we, by God's grace, did our first pilot outside of the country last year. We're aiming to be in 2 more African countries by the end of this year,
That's
right?
great.
So it's definitely, for us right now, it's just this strategic focus on those 3 priorities of ours, which is relevant digital skills training, access to internet infrastructure, and income opportunities, right? Which is where my second business comes in. So I have a for-profit business called Avery, and that's essentially building the bridge between skill and income, right?
Got you.
And you'll see I haven't said employment, because the reality is not everybody is going to get a job. Some people are going to create those jobs. Some people are going to be contributors from a consulting perspective. How do we make space for all of this? So I'm focused less on the vehicle and more on the kilometers. Like, how do we get you there? And that's what income does, right? Because I think, it's a basic human right for people to be able to provide for themselves, their household, and the community. So how do we do that? And that's what Avery is focused on from a future workforce perspective, right? The short-term goals for social coding is continuing with our Pan-African mission, right? It's bringing on more partners, right, who have the same vision, who are passionate about dealing with, youth empowerment. From a medium-term goal, it's setting up these different countries with our branches independently, right? So I want social coding Zambia to operate independently, but they all report to a central system, right? So it's kind of figuring that out. What does that look like? How do we have
Well, you need
independent
to do that, see the issues, and then
100%, right? And then from a long-term perspective, I am truly building a business that will be the most valuable, right, when it comes to youth development and advancement. I think a lot of companies are just focusing on the development part. I'm focused on the advancement. How do we advance? We're giving you the skill. How do we advance?
Advance, yes.
Right? So long-term is building a valuable company and on the continent that is focused on youth development and advancement, that is ensuring that we have digital democracy across communities by 2050. And lastly, that is ensuring that every person who comes as part of our program is able to take care of themselves, their household, and their community. Yeah.
Okay, and then just on a macro level, South Africa specific, and the reason being, I mean, obviously, we've made a big call, in terms of staying, I don't want to say staying in the country, but really trying to build something that is of super value in South Africa.
Yeah.
We obviously going to the US now to unlock some of our businesses there. But the point is, we've got a great view of what South Africa can be. And we really believe in the country, and it's unsettling that we aren't, I don't want to say aren't there yet, but it doesn't feel like we're really on the journey towards that. So my question is, on a macro level, what do you think South Africa can be? What can South Africa be? And I'll probe you a bit, right? Because you said earlier something to the extent that South Africa isn't the United States, right? So can South Africa be like the United States? Do you think we have the talent, the resource? Do you think we can actually build that level of country?
We can 100%.
Okay, but then elaborate on that.
Yeah, we can 100% be better. And I think it's because if you look at the judicial system of the states, their entire government, that thing is chaotic. I have no idea how their government works. And I think half of them don't know either. Right?
Yes.
South Africa, in theory, relatively straightforward. We're a democratic country, right? We don't have these different state parties, whatever. And I think if we truly work that to our advantage, building businesses, building policy, and building our people would be much easier, right? Do we have the, the capacity, I think, to be on level from a global standards as the US? No, I think we can be better, right? Because of the things that I've mentioned. Also because we have youth on our side, right?
That's such a powerful thing, to be really honest. It's really powerful.
We have youth on our side, right? If you look at how governments around the world are structured, is you have these older people that are in positions, right, that should be passed down to younger people right now because they have the knowledge. I think being in an internet age has exposed us to a lot more insights. We also have the benefit of technology on our side, right? So making it easier for us to make better decisions and quicker decisions, efficient ones, right? So if you look at a continent like Africa, if you look at South Africa in general, right, 60% of our population is under the age of 34.
That's amazing. That is so
incredible.
amazing. I mean, that really, if
economy,
you ever want to be positioned as a nation, that is amazing.
100%. Have we harnessed the power of the youth? We have not.
Not at all.
Right,
well,
not
we
at
don't
all.
empower them.
100%. And I think it's because the mentality of the people who are in power right now is greed. It's corrupt, right? And it's also one that says, if I relinquish this to someone who's younger than me, they'll mess it up, right? Because I'm older.
And there's a cultural issue there.
100%.
Huge cultural issue.
100%. So I think what older people need to understand is, number one, we're not saying we're going to get rid of you completely, right? What we're saying is you need to make room to mentor us to have these positions. No one is asking for a 25-year-old to be president. No, right? What we are saying is there is a 45-year-old somewhere out there who can do an excellent job, right? With your wisdom and experience and that mentorship that should be happening, right? Give that young person a chance. So coming back to answering your question directly, I do believe we can be better if we harnessed, number one, the fact that our democracy from a theoretical perspective should be easier to navigate from policy, right? Number two, we have the power of the youth, right? And we also have the hindsight of what a undemocratic country looks like and the problem.
Yes,
If we do not bring everyone along, regardless of
exactly.
color,
Exactly.
right? So because we learned that, we are making the same mistakes. You know, black people are isolating white people and, not including them a part of the journey. White people feel isolated, so they're isolated. There's just so much non-unity that's happening that's causing us to fall back, right?
Okay. We've got the great load shedding chasing us in
Okay.
5 minutes.
We were going to leave that on the podcast because, I mean, this was now a really topical point to actually go on.
100%, but yeah.
Oh my goodness, do we actually need to cut?
Yeah, we'll need
Is,
to
is,
cut.
okay, let me not mention the name.
So,
I
on
just,
that point,
Yeah.
Eskom is cutting us short.
oh, you want to, okay. Let's just spend a moment, if you can just spend a minute,
Yeah.
if you are willing to, right?
Yeah.
What do you, not who you're going to vote for, which I think is a very good question, but what is a good result, do you think, for the elections coming up? What do you think? And this is a difficult one because it does sort of poise you to actually share some of your political views. But I'm asking it because I'll tell you, I'll elaborate a bit and we'll need to push for time, but I want to ask the question.
Yeah.
There's so much of divide
Yeah.
with regards to what is a good outcome.
Yeah.
Do we continue on the status quo because at least then there's peace, quote unquote? Do we try as young people to get this vote to change to a coalition outcome and then, sit with the risk of whoever party trying to make a mess of things or, whatever the case may be? The divide is very big on this.
Yeah.
And I just like to give or hear an external view on this. Obviously, you being a black female and, it would be great to hear a truthful view from your perspective, within the context of South Africa.
Yeah. So there's a saying that came to me that completely altered my brain chemistry, right? This young woman said, I have stopped navigating this world as what I think it should be, and I have started navigating it as it is, right? And how I translate that for me right now in terms of the political environment that we are in is I understand that this election might not bring about what I truly want, right? And you're gonna have to wait for the next episode of Dragon Ball Z to find out what I truly want, right? But I do want us to push for a coalition, right? And I want it because we need to disempower as much as we can, right? The people that are currently in power and have done nothing to the benefit of a majority of South Africans, right? So I am praying and pushing for a coalition, right? And I want young people to truly spend time reading manifestos. There is TikTok now. If you can't read a whole entire thing, go on TikTok and just ask for like snippets of manifestos, right?
It'll give you a good idea.
It will
But that's
give you
a
good
powerful
idea.
tip because
That's
it's
a-
so
yeah.
relevant.
100%. Again, let's navigate the world as it is right now. Young people do not want to read. They do not want to read pages and pages of manifestos. How do we assist them?
Well, they all get lost in it.
100%. How do we assist them? Well, use the platforms they're currently on. People, content, and there's so much responsibility that content creators have. There's so much responsibility that content creators have for their platform, right? We need to ensure that we are providing bite-sized information that is relevant and knowledgeable, that a person can make a decision from a 1 minute clip kind of thing, right?
Well,
So
it lures them into sort of a direction.
a decision
at
making,
least.
100%.
Because I think everybody know that whatever's happening currently is not working.
100%. For my young black females out there, the world has consistently told us that we are at the bottom of the totem pole, right? And it's usually those that are perceived at the bottom that hold a lot of power. I want young black women, young black men, young white men, young white women, right? To sit with themselves and say, what kind of world do I want to live in? And then bring it home. What kind of South Africa do I want to live in? Do I want to raise my children in? And then you look at, is it the world you're currently living in? Is it the country you're currently living in? If it's not, how do you change that? You start by registering, well, it's too late now, but you start by voting, and you start by now empowering yourself with knowledge to say, whose manifesto, whose leadership up until now showcases, because not politicians are not perfect, but showcases and closely resembles the world and the South Africa that I want to live in. Yeah.
All righty, Thembi, thank you for answering that actually truthfully. I mean, I think it's a difficult question, and it definitely puts a person, on or out there, right? So thank you for that. I mean, we appreciate it. I think maybe we'll conclude with this. May God continue to bless you.
Thank you.
And I know that He will. You're really on an amazing journey, and we're excited to see what you're going to do and achieve, and the millions and millions of lives that you're going to impact.
Thank you.
I think it's already done. You just need to walk it out.
Yeah.
And well done for having done what you've done.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Thembi.
you.
Thanks for being on.
Thank you. Thank you for this platform. I think I love, if I can just fangirl for like 2 seconds. Love the work that you young two gentlemen are doing. And also, I love the fact that you're bringing diverse voices. I think we need more of that, right? And just creating a space that is safe for us to have these conversations. So I will not be watching this episode.
No, you should.
I don't like the sound of my own voice.
No, you should.
But I'm excited for everything else that's going to drop this year.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, T.
Cheers.
Thank you, guys. And vote. Vote.
Yes, vote.
Please. Cheers.